Good evening. We're going to wait just a few more minutes to get started this evening. As maybe some of you have experienced, finding Eden Valley can be a little difficult. Um, and so we want to give people a little bit of chance to get in here and get settled in. So about 3 more minutes and then we will get started. Don't forget to sign up, fill out the paperwork. The enter to win. We'll be giving away two signed copies of Dr. Grandin's books. The first one is Thinking in Pictures, which most of you will probably be familiar with if you saw the HBO movie. And then the other one is her latest one that she'll be sharing today on visual thinking. So if you haven't done that already, make sure you get your name in there. All right. Am I on? Yes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming out and joining us tonight here at Eden Valley Institute of Wellness. My name is Phyllis Zimmerman, and I'm the Education Director here at Eden Valley, as well as the President of the Northern Colorado Autism Association. Tonight's event is part of our Discovery Wellness series that we have here, where we try to bring new features, expand your learning and so forth. And so that's what we're doing tonight for your personal growth. Before we get started, before I introduce our speaker in full, I would like to tell you a little bit about Eden Valley Institute. Most of you, I think, some of you, quite a few of you know who we are and what we do here. But for those that don't, as you can see here, we have been celebrating. We just recently celebrated 60 years of serving in the Valley here with lifestyle medicine, with education programs. We have a beautiful farm here where we serve. We have now he threw me off. We have the farm that has produce, and we actually provide produce to 8 different farmers markets here. We have 5 greenhouses and so forth. Part of that farm program that we have here, that food is here that we produce goes out to the community, to the farmers markets, as well as feeds our lifestyle guests that come from all over the world. And also the many homes that you see, if you were to take a look before it gets dark, you'll see homes on the outskirts of our campus, and those are where our volunteers live as well. So, as I was mentioning, we have a lifestyle center here, and we are known for treating lifestyle diseases ranging from stress and burnout all the way to cancer. And that's really what we're known for, using natural remedies for treatment of lifestyle diseases. And then we have the education department, in which I'm in charge of. And underneath that is a medical missionary evangelism training program where they learn how to do evangelism, but also natural medicine, natural treatments, and so forth, to be able to work in lifestyle centers, to go out and just to help the general public and so forth. And so that's what the education department has. We also have on campus here a country store that has some proprietary items that are specific to our institute here. And then we have other items. So it's like a little health food store right down just a little bit further onto the campus. We are delighted to be able to announce that we have a new in-city health food store, natural health food store, that will have ready-to-eat foods that will be opening up in June, I think, yeah. And it's called Wholesome Bites. And if you're local here, it's going to be right here on Eisenhower, 34 and Eisenhower, on the corner of Taft and Wilson. Yeah, one of those two over there. So we have a lot of stuff going on here, and we're very excited to be able to be part of that. I invite you to take some time afterwards to peruse the tables and see what we have and get interested. We have some capture codes, not capture codes, what are they called? QR codes that you can scan on your phone. There's a free cookbook out there that has all kinds of natural and plant-based whole food recipes and so forth. So take some time to peruse over there, and then when we're done after the program, also we'll have a little bit of time of Q&A, and then if you would like to speak with Dr. Grandin, she'll be over in this section as well. So I think that's the main things that I wanted to hit. What I'd like to also let you know about Eden Valley Institute is that we are a Christian Seventh-day Adventist institute. And everything that we do here, we do all for the glory of God. And everything that the guests, and we have quite a few of our health guests here tonight, experience. We use hydrotherapy, we use different types of herbs, and we do hyperbaric, we do all different types of treatments. But we don't do them, the healing doesn't come through that. We attribute the healing solely and wholly to God. And so because this is a Christian Seventh-day Adventist institution, I would like to start our evening out with a quick prayer, and then we'll get started. If you don't mind, bow your heads. Father, we praise you this evening and the purpose that you have for it. Thank you for every seat that is here tonight. I ask for a special blessing on this evening for each mind and each heart, and feel the presence in this room. Thank you, Lord, for bringing Dr. Grandin here, safe and sound. I just pray that you would just speak to her and speak through her. I know there's people here that have questions that she'll be able to direct for some answers. And so, Lord, I just ask that you'll bless our time. In your name we pray, Jesus. Amen. So now it's with great pleasure that I'd like to introduce you to tonight's speaker, who will share about visual thinking, the hidden gifts of people who think in pictures and patterns and abstractions. Our speaker has served as an inspiration and role model to hundreds of thousands of families with autism, including mine personally. Well, we've met off and on for years now. I've been in the autism community here in Fort Collins for about 17 years. And so I've had the privilege of being hearing and learning from her as a parent and as a professional as well. She is a prominent author and speaker on both autism and animal behavior. Today, she's a professor of animal science at Colorado State University. She also has a successful career consulting on both livestock handling equipment and animal welfare. She has been featured on NPR, that's National Public Radio, the BBC special called A Woman Who Thinks Like a Cow. She has also appeared on national TV shows such as Larry King Live, 2020, 60 Minutes, Fox and Friends, and has a 2010, which most of you are familiar with probably, TED Talk. on YouTube. Articles about her life and her accomplishments have appeared in Time Magazine, New York Times, Discover Magazine, Forbes, and USA Today. And most of us in the last couple of weeks here as part of Eden Valley, we've been watching and got to view her HBO movie that was made about her life. And it's an Emmy Award winning movie that HBO did that was really opened up the eyes of the world to what autism looks like and is how different it is from what we are taught. She was also inducted into the American Academy of Arts and Science, and just most recently, I was excited to see that she was honored with a bronze sculpture that's housed over within the JBS Global Food Innovation Center at Colorado State University campus. So our speaker tonight, like I said, she is world-renowned professor, teacher, advocate, hero, and inspiration for so many. It's with great honor, ladies and gentlemen, that I invite you to please join me in welcoming Dr. Temple Grandin.
Well, it's great to be here. I would have been here a whole hour sooner, but Google Maps is really messed up badly, really badly. And you need to get a better sign out there. It's actually a safety hazard. And the thing is, I'm a visual thinker. So actually, you should have told me to come in on 34 because coming in on Horsetooth Dam is actually quite scary. And you didn't warn me about that. But then I'm thinking about the perfect way to do the directions coming on 34. You'd say, well, there's that gas station. And then the school's only like a half turn, is only a half mile from the gas station. That's kind of navigating by landmarks. That's how I normally like to navigate. But actually, the maps are just wrong. They're labeled wrong. I spent half an hour down at the gas station, and if she hadn't called me, I would have turned back and called the front desk here. Nobody answered. So at least I got here. But let's just look at working with, like accommodation to someone with autism. It's not the best way to do it. Because the problem is that it causes panic. Then I almost did turn around and go home because I had no idea where it was. And fortunately, the man at the gas station knew. I waited until his boss came back, and they were able to tell me how to get here. So there still is a place for asking for directions. But that's it's actually a safety hazard. Let's fix the signs, make them a whole bunch bigger, because you can't see them. I was coming in from the Horsetooth way, didn't see them. Okay, now we're going to talk about visual thinking. And the first step that people have to realize is that different kinds of thinking exist. I didn't know that other people think in words until I was in my late 30s. I didn't know that. But, autistic people, some of them think in pictures, some of them think in math, and there's some word thinkers and but they tend to be an extreme of one kind of thinking, a visual thinker, a math thinker, or maybe a word thinker. And actually, the world needs all the different kinds of minds. Now, being a visual thinker helped me in my work with cattle because animals live in a sensory-based world. There's one of my drawings right there. In fact, that's the drawing I used to sell Cargill on to design the front end of every Cargill beef plant. I'll tell you one thing I do like on Google is Google Earth, so I can look at stuff. I should have done that at home on the desktop. That would have helped, but it wouldn't label the roads correctly. But people thought it was weird for me to get down in the chutes and see what cattle are seeing. But you see, if you think verbally, then you think that getting in there to see what cattle are seeing is like ridiculous. But at the time, I didn't know the other people didn't think in pictures like me. Now, I do involve a lot of engineering stuff. I'm also quite a NASA geek. And your mathematical engineer calculates risk. I found something in this launch pad 5.5 years ago that shouldn't be in there. He was living in there. And he was around fueling equipment that you don't really want him around. They didn't know it was in there. We were under there at 7 o'clock in the morning. I saw him waddle down the stairway, and nobody else saw it. And the Artemis rocket successfully went on that launch pad. Maybe I helped de-raccoonify it. You see, that's an example of seeing risk. And we need people like me who are terrible in algebra in science. Millions of dollars worth of cancer research was wrecked because they didn't specify which mixing device they used to mix up cancer cells. It matters. It totally changed the results. Now, there's different kinds of thinking, and the first type is my kind of thinking. The scientific name for my kind of thinker is the object visualizer. And the kind of stuff we're good at, anything mechanical. The person who can fix anything. You know how to get the autistic adults off the video games? Car mechanics. There's been 5 or 6 successful cases of getting them off with car mechanics. Art, photography, working with animals, and highly skilled trades. Those are places where visual thinkers like me need to go. And when I was out working on things like Montfort plants and Cargill plants, about 20% of the people I worked with were either autistic, dyslexic, or ADHD, undiagnosed. Special ed builds the stuff. And we've got a big problem right now not replacing them. And I've been hearing about all the awful stuff going on in your schools. It sounds like it really deteriorated post-COVID. That's not good. Now, I've been in some other states. I've seen some good stuff. Now, then your spatial visualizer, your typical STEM kid, your mathematics kid, thinks in patterns. Think music and math, they go together. Music and math go together. Chemistry, computer programming, mathematics. And then, of course, we got our word thinkers. I've been messing around with ChatGPT. It's really good at law. It aced the bar exam. Do you know that? It passed the bar exam, almost at the 90th percentile. And I played around with it. I typed in behavioral principles of cattle handling, write a short paragraph, found one of my papers, summarized it, referenced it. Then I used wording for cattle handling I don't normally use, good cattle handling methods, and it summarized 4 extension articles and referenced them. And then I asked it to write a short paragraph on the behavior of purple flying zebras. And it wrote the cutest little creative writing about how they fly in herds that play with each other, and they eat rainbows and clouds. Yeah, very creative. Yeah, it's going to be really, really good at verbal thinking. Math, nope, there's another program you can use for math. Okay, now there's scientific evidence, and I have a whole chapter in my visual thinking book that different kinds of thinking exist. There's research behind this. This isn't something I just made up. I kind of figured it out, and then I found the research. But in order to find the research, you have to use this magic word, object visualizer. Visual thinking doesn't bring up the papers. Object visualizer does. And the problem is in a lot of studies, they're mixing the object visualizer and the visual spatial mathematicians together. They are not the same. But if you don't have the magic keyword object visualizer, then Google Scholar doesn't pull up the literature. It's a text-based program. It's a lot of people are mixtures of the different kinds of thinking, but you get a kid with a special ed label. They might have an extreme mathematician, an extreme music person. You need to move them ahead in the math. I was just up at a very interesting meeting. It was the food workers meeting, the King Supers. All the grocery store employees were there. And they were telling me about a kid who was brilliant in math. He didn't go the special ed route. He went the full scholarship route. You find a kid that's super good in math, let's move them ahead. And don't use this weird math we have now. Dig up the old algebra books out of the attic. Those are the ones you want to use. Move that kid ahead. Big problem I'm seeing is people getting too stuck on the autism label, especially with the fully verbal kids. My kind of mind needs to be taken shop, auto mechanics. There's tons of jobs. There's a place called TACT down in Denver. They're training autistic kids for auto mechanics, and the dealerships are just snapping them right up. That's the kind of stuff we need to be having these kids doing. I get really frustrated as I go back and forth. I'm not happy with what you've told me about the school where you're at. It's like really terrible. No, these kids need to be taken shop. In fact, that reminds me of a very interesting trip I had to the airport. We were coming in from the Vail area, and this guy, when he was a kid, was a bad boy, all kinds of fighting, all kinds of trouble. He took welding. He does high steel now in Denver. And when you put up the skeleton of a building in Denver, only 4 or 5 guys put it up. And so he can look at that building and say, I built the framework for that bank building or whatever it is. And he said the anger went away. And I think that's the satisfaction of that work. And when I was my 20s, I wanted to prove to people I wasn't stupid. That was kind of controlled anger. And the grandson of Gandhi gave a very interesting talk about at-risk youth. Maybe we're supposed to call them something else now. But he said, anger is like electricity. You can use it to power your house and do all kinds of good things, or you can just burn stuff up with it. There's two kinds of anger. That wanting to prove I wasn't stupid. Okay, that kind of, I'm going to show them I can build that high steel. That is the constructive kind of anger. And my kind of mind, especially the bad boys, let's put them into welding, ironworking, auto mechanics. That's where they belong. And it's kind of, exciting climbing up 20 floors above the ground. If you've ever seen that famous picture of the people sitting on the beam with no harnesses, well, now they have harnesses. Turns out I got big visual thinking circuits, really, really big visual thinking circuits. Now let's look at how different learners learn. Object visualizers want to see how stuff works. Look at pictures and videos. Verbal thinkers want to read about it. And the visual spatial, the mathematician tends to look at both. But this is interesting how different types of students went about a project where they had to design a planet. Art students make it really fanciful. Crystals, scrapers. Science students kind of boring and round, describe the gravity. And the verbal students made splotches. But what's the worst thing about the verbal students? They didn't do any planning. One of the big problems with verbal students is broad concepts. Politicians, for example. I just talked to a political science student this morning in the parking lot, and he didn't know that visual thinking existed. But when you might have a concept like an inclusive classroom. Well, how do you actually do that? I tend to think of specific examples. One of the things I want to do is get rid of all the LED lighting that flickers, because that's going to bother your head injury people like veterans. And it's maybe causes a problem for about 10, 20% of autism and dyslexic. It only affects the subtype. But, you got people getting migraines from some of these LED lights. And you know how you find the LEDs are bad? Whip out that fancy new phone, set it on slow motion video, photograph the room, wave your hand, and play it back. You got to make sure it goes. And you'll find the bad LEDs. Verbal thinkers tend to overgeneralize. More and more policy stuff is the verbal thinkers. And I'm very worried that my kind of mind's getting screened out because I can't do algebra. I don't think I could graduate from high school. So what would I do today? If I was a student today and somebody waved a magic wand, I'm 18 years old, come out of a real bad background, but they kept me with my knowledge. See that big Amazon warehouse about ready to open? I'm heading straight for that. And my goal is to design the next one. I already went shopping for the equipment that's going in there. It's not from the US. And that's because in Europe, they haven't taken out shop classes. That's the reason. There's a lot of stuff we're not making. We're now starting to put it back, especially mechanical stuff. Back when the patent office started, it was all mechanical equipment, like a blacksmith making a grain harvester. The Wright brothers, they were bicycle mechanics. And then the 3D printer guy, that's a mechanical device. There's stuff we don't make, and it goes back to taking out shop classes. Like when there was Montfort's, they had this big place called the Montfort Fab Shop, and they built all their own equipment. ConAgra shut that down 20 years ago, and now there's not enough shops to build equipment, and the shops that are left are just ripping everybody off. And the problem is a link with special ed. Those new shops should be coming out of the kids coming out of the high schools welding. No, they're too busy on the iPhones and doing all kinds of other bad stuff. When some of those boys that are my kind of mind, they need to be in shop class. I've worked with them. I spent 25 years in heavy construction, especially in the 80s and the early 90s. Most educators don't know anything about construction. I'm very concerned today that a lot of people are growing up totally removed from the practical. Kids that don't know how to measure things, didn't even know what a ruler is. Half of large 3D printers are from Europe. This is the state-of-the-art electronic chip-making machine. It's from Holland. Our scientists here invented the physics. So the math kids here invented the physics, but the people in the workshops built the machine. Electron microscope from Germany. That's state-of-the-art pork plant. That equipment's from Holland. We still know how to build a beef plant. Let me tell you why. This one person can't do algebra. And back in the early 90s, he built a tiny little cattle handling facility for our experiment station. That was 31 years ago. He's building beef plants. He has a corporate jet, and he can't do algebra. And that plane has paid for itself in the construction mistakes where he could fly around to these jobs. Parachute cloth from Europe. And that's the Steve Jobs Theater, me screaming in there, we don't make it anymore. Structural glass walls from Italy and Germany. All these classes up here on these slides, we need to put them all back in there. The hands-on classes. You've got those. But are the special ed kids kicked out of shop? This is something I'm running into now. They're saying the special ed kids can't take shop because of insurance. I've worked with the bad boys that were the special ed kids. See, this is the thing that's really bad. In fact, some of the autistic kids will be better on the safety rules than some of the other autistic, of some of the just regular kids. I think I've seen autistic kids get into FFA. Best thing that ever happened to them because of the discipline. A discipline. You don't dress like a slob. You know how public speaking at meetings. I think it's a wonderful program. I can't do algebra. I'm worried about my kind of mind getting screened out. You need us before the water systems all fall apart. My grandfather was a co-inventor of the autopilot for airplanes. MIT trained engineer, worked with an autistic man who came up with that crazy idea for an autopilot. Everybody thought it was goofy. And they tinkered and they tinkered and they made it work. And then it was stolen. They needed a lawyer. The stolen version was in every warplane during World War II. Now let's go back to the food processing plant. My kind of mind that can't do algebra builds all the mechanical devices and patents them. The math thinkers, they got to do the boilers and refrigeration, the stuff that requires a lot more mathematics. Make sure the roof doesn't fall down. Things that require the mathematics. So you need both kinds of minds. Now we've got a huge shortage of electricians. Now let's just look at some accommodations at work. There's two that are super important. Don't put them on the chaos, rapid multitasking jobs like the takeout window. The other thing is, let's take electricians. There was a sad story just this year. Electrician apprentice lost a job because the boss would go yakety yak, 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 yak about a light fixture and about a switch and a bunch of other stuff. And you see, I cannot remember long strings of verbal sequence. This is where I need a pilot's checklist, where I write down the things to install. Or if I had to close the Walmart cash register out, write down the steps. Very important. Maybe you don't want to disclose. You can just say pilots need a checklist. I need one too. And for pilots, it's mandatory. But a pilot's checklist would save a ton of jobs. You see, the way my mind works is bottom up. And the need for the pilot's checklist comes up all the time. Yeah, don't put long strings of verbal instructions on them. They cannot remember it. They have to write it down step by step. Well, Betsy and I collaborated on the visual thinking book. I did my kind of disorganized rough drafts. The verbal thinker, she smoothed them all out for me. Object visualizers design the building and make it look nice. Engineers make sure it doesn't fall down. But it would be a concrete box. This is where you need both kinds of minds. 20% of the people I worked with owned shops, multiple patents. Most of them couldn't do algebra. So where's the back door? It's at Amazon warehouse. Yeah, you learn every job on the floor, then you start fixing things, and then you start inventing things. No, I went shopping for the type of equipment that would fit. I could tell when they built the building how it was decked. Of course, I looked when I went by it. I didn't even know what it was when it started. No, the equipment's from Europe, and some of it's from India, India. Yeah, this goes back to our educational system. Then I look up the companies, and then they show off their projects. That's how you find out whose equipment's in there, because on their websites, they show off their client list, and they show off photos of the projects. I'm really good at looking that stuff up. I have grandparents that come up to me all the time. They discover they're autistic when the kids get diagnosed. So why does granddaddy have a great job and the kids are going terrible? I think it goes back to old-fashioned 50s upbringing, where social rules were taught in a more structured way. There was a method I call teachable moments. So let's say I stirred my drink with my finger. Mother would say, use the spoon. They'd give the instruction instead of screaming no. Really, really important. See, we're not doing that today. And then when I was 7 or 8 years old, I had to dress up in my good clothes and serve the snacks and shake hands with the guests at my mother's parties. I sold candy for charity. So I had to go up to people and get them to buy candy. And I'm realizing what important skills I learned from that. There was nothing expensive or difficult about doing this. The other thing is my mother and the school formed a team. And the rules were the same at home and school. They were on the same team working together. I'm hearing more and more complaints, especially since COVID, where the parents expect the school just to fix the kid. That's not going to work. You've got to have the parents and the school on the same wavelength. You know, what would happen to some of our top innovators of yesteryear? How about Michelangelo? Grubby little 12-year-old, dropped out of school, running around in all the cathedrals looking at great art, that's exposure, had stone cutting tools. You see, you got to get exposed to something to get interested. I just got a nice email today about an autistic boy that he loved sundials. And his mother encouraged that. The school saying, well, stomp out that fixation. No, sundials, let's expand that. Yeah, you want to take that fixation and expand it. A real common one's cars. Let's read about them, do math with them, build them. Take that fixation and expand it. Expand the fixation. Because I used to just draw the same horse head over and over again. Mother said, well, let's draw the stable. You see, that's expanding that fixation. So it's not as fixated. But you look at all the good careers, it starts with exposure, then mentoring. Einstein, no speech until age 3. Steve Jobs, bullied in school. I was bullied in school. Steve Jobs probably on the spectrum. He was an artist. He's an artist. He made the interface for the phone, and the engineers had to make the phone work. That's the two minds working together. And the only places I was not bullied was friends who shared interests. That's where autistic kids are going to get their friends. In band, woodworking class, art class, music class, theater. Thomas Edison probably was on the spectrum. High school dropout. But he was mentored by a telegraph operator. And the same thing with Michelangelo. Then he was pulled into a studio and mentored. So exposure, then mentoring. A lot of kids aren't getting exposed to enough stuff to find out what they might want to do for a career. Elon Musk is on the spectrum. Fabulous with rockets and cars. Twitter, I don't know about that. He has a 10-year-old's humor. You know what the default automatic email to the press is? It's a cute little poop emoji. Cute little brown turd, and it looks like a Kong toy. That's something a 10-year-old would do. Also, on the Tesla car, when you use the turn signal, when it's set on a special setting, it farts. Yeah, it's really funny. Now, a Nobel Prize winner was 50% more likely to have an arts and crafts hobby compared to other scientists. That's another reason for hands-on classes. Okay, tips for working with minds that are different. Let's avoid the chaos multitasking jobs. The pilot's checklist thing, I would say every kid with a learning difference just about needs a pilot checklist. Because if I was a computer, I have an Intel 286, I have no working memory, but tons of long-term memory. And so I have to write it down. And when I was in college, I was a very good note taker. Very, very good. And that made up for my bad working memory. I'm seeing parents babying the kids too much. I'm seeing too many fully verbal kids that have never gone shopping by themselves. You have got to be kidding. We've got to get these kids out doing things. Now, we don't throw them into something that's absolutely total sensory overload. Where's a student 10 years after high school? I was doing my big projects. So how did I sell my work? I showed off my work. That's selling my work right there. That's the drawing that was used to sell Cargill. I designed the front end of every Cargill beef plant. All the steel and concrete work, center track restrainer system. There's that same drawing. These are some of the pictures here. Showing off my work. Selling my work instead of myself. See, the verbal thinkers get all hung up on the interview, but you're going to be building stuff. The interview doesn't matter. There's my brochure. There's another job. Another thing that really helped me was lots of exercise. Right now, I do 120 old lady push-ups every night. It's just the front half, but that front half comes up off the rug 120 times every single night. And I park in the parking. I haven't tried to get a special parking pass. I probably could. No, I walk in from the parking garage. Figure I need to walk in from the parking garage, and it's about a 2-block walk, and get some exercise. And the burst of exercise really helps me. Really, really helps me. Work experience. We need to start the transition to work before they graduate from high school. And when I was 13, mother got me a little sewing job that a seamstress just taught out of her house. I was 15, cleaning horse stalls out of my aunt's ranch. I had a little sign painting business. And the first sign I painted for pay was for a hair salon. And I had to make a sign a hair salon would want. Now, just while I was down at the gas station and all the other places, I was listening to an NPR show about, children working in meat packing plants and stuff like that. Absolutely not. But I totally go along with 14-year-olds working in ice cream shop, an office supply store, part-time to learn working skills. And yes, oil rigs, no. Meat packing plants, no. Heavy equipment, no. But one of the big problems is kids are not learning working skills. And we need to start having a slow transition from the world of school to the world of work. We're really falling down on teaching life skills. Back doors to jobs. Go down to the Amazon warehouse, but you got to pay your dues. You better work your butt off, stuffing those boxes. I don't think that part's totally automated yet. That's on the bottom floor. Elementary life skills training, I already discussed that. But these were important things. And then the learning money. The only way to learn money when you're a visual thinker is what you can buy with different amounts of money. And in the 50s, which was about $5 today, I could get 5 Superman comics, 10 candy bars, but if I wanted a 69-cent airplane, I had to save for 2 weeks. I was learning that when I was 8. I just can't emphasize how important this stuff was. This was standard parenting for kids in the 50s. Standard. I don't care what the income level is. They can do these things. This is not hard. Okay, friends who shared interests. Lots of that. And then when I was in high school, I got sent to a special boarding school for fighting. I threw a book at a girl. I did not do anything bad with tools. No, I would not want to lose using tools. I threw a book at a girl and I did some fists. No tools being used for anything bad. But you see, I had to fix up this shed the way other people would like it. And then when I was getting my master's in Arizona, I painted this goofy sign for the State Fair Carnival. So how'd you get that job? I showed them a portfolio of my signs. And there's my sign painting truck driving. It's going to take longer. A lot more practice in a totally safe place. That gets rid of the multitasking issue. I did 200 miles on dirt roads before I touched traffic. 20 minutes a day going up and back to my aunt's mailbox. Here's just slow transition to the world of work. How about a church volunteer job at age 11? It's very important for this kid to have a job on a schedule where somebody outside the family is the boss. I think that's really, really important. But I'm seeing kids so babied. Now, we don't throw them into the deep end of the pool on that McDonald's takeout window. I do not have the processor speed to handle the McDonald's takeout window. But let me tell you what a McDonald's just last year did to accommodate. They had a lady who had autism on the cash register, and when the store got busy, they put her on cleaning tables. See how that was just a nice little simple thing. Sometimes we just make this stuff overly complicated. Another important mentor for me was Jim the contractor. He'd seen my work. He was starting a small steel and concrete business. He was a former Marine military captain. I had quite a few mentors, actually, were ex-military officers. Kind of a no-nonsense, really practical. Another really important mentor. When I was young, my mother taught me to read at age 8. I had a great speech teacher, a great science teacher. I really want to give credit to teachers that helped me. I gave a little short talk today to the Board of Governors of Colorado State, and I talked about the importance of very good teachers, and that there was a teacher at Arizona State University named Philip Stiles. He taught introductory animal science. He got me into the animal science department. Thank you, Philip. He didn't do much research, but he did a lot of teaching, and teaching was the thing that he cared about. Sensory problems. Sensory problems are real. Now let's talk about how we can work on desensitizing some of this stuff. Noisy stuff like vacuum cleaners, have the kid turn it on and off. Have the kid control. Okay, the mic screeches when you put it near the speaker, then you let the kid do this. Or they initiate that screeching sound. And if they wear headphones all the time, it will make sound sensitivity worse. You can have them with you all the time for control. Control is really important, but don't wear them all the time. I've heard some horror stories where they got so sensitive they couldn't stand quiet dinner conversation. Clothes from thrift stores. New things I have to wash them with that go against my skin. And the cheap cottons itch. I've had really good luck with Walmart pants. Well, the little trendy stores, the stuff wore out and it itched. No, Walmart's a good solid value. And I washed these pants twice before I wore them. And then they don't itch on a plane, and I've got a flight tomorrow. Now let's look at visual processing problems. I already talked about the LEDs that flicker. Some kids, even though the eye test is okay, they're afraid of escalators. They can't tell how to get on them. And the print may jiggle on the page. There's some simple stuff you can try. They might even have that happen if they're really messed up, or that. Print jiggling on the page. Now I want to make it plain. This is not all dyslexia. It is a subtype. I had a student that had this. And the thing that helped her was tan paper, printing her work on tan paper. Tried light blue paper, light yellow, light lavender, light gray. All those different kinds of papers. Incandescent lights, you can't even get them anymore. Fluorescents are gone. I need to update this slide. So what you got to do is find the LEDs that don't flicker. So let's say you're stuck in a classroom with horrible LEDs. Buy a lamp, get a really bright LED that you like, and you put it next to your desk to blot out the other lights. I'm always trying to think of simple stuff that we can do. None of the things I've recommended cost $1 jillion. Now, the problem with some of these sensory issues is in a noisy place, like a noisy restaurant, it's very hard for me to hear. I'm kind of functionally deaf in a noisy environment. And some autistics are going to need sensory breaks. They're going to need them. Now, this environmental enrichment is a treatment for autism. That's the title of a paper. And what's done in this paper is they stimulate two different senses at the same time, like touch of cold water and smell cinnamon. And you're always changing the pair of stimuli. I think it desensitizes. This is an evidence-based paper using simple household things. And that's the title. Environmental enrichment is an effective treatment for autism. Now, one of the ways to avoid the paywall is look it up on Google Scholar and look for all the versions. I think you can avoid the paywall. Now, if you're working with older nonverbal, non-speaking, these are books written by individuals who do not speak. But they look very severe. A lot of jerky motion, a lot of stimming and stuff like that. And if you're working, I'm not talking about 3-year-olds here, but older kids and adults, I recommend these books that are on this slide. You must read them. And we need to be working with the older nonverbals to teach them how to type. But remember that little processor? Can't attention shift? So if the keyboard's down here and the screen's up here, they can't make the shift. That's why a tablet works. Attention shifting slowness. This is why there's a problem with multitasking, rapid multitasking. This is the problem why it's hard for me to follow rapid chit-chat conversations. Now, this is a study that was done with eye tracking software over 20 years ago. And look at how the normal person looks back and forth so many times compared to the autistic. Okay, let's talk about little kids. What do we want out of a 3-year-old's program? I want speech. I want the ability to wait and take turns at games. And I want skills, dressing, hand washing, using utensils. And the kids should like going to therapy. This is what I want out of 3-year-olds. And I would call that progress. Slow down when you talk to these kids. You also have to give them time to respond because they're like a slow computer that takes time for the website to load. Also, I talked about the teachable moments and giving the instructions instead of screaming no when I stick my finger in the mashed potatoes. Now that's working memory trashed. Another problem I've got is constant fear and anxiety. Absolute constant fear and anxiety. My amygdala was 3 times bigger than normal. My nervous system was ramped up. Like, okay, I go outside and there's like lions and tigers all over the place. I know there's not. But that's the way my nervous system was. And as I went through my 20s, it worsened. The colitis worsened, absolutely worsened. Afraid of everything, terrified of airplanes, terrified of public speaking. I'll tell you, one of the secrets on the public speaking is have really good slides. Then when you panic, you just go to the next slide. Airplanes, I was in a scary emergency landing as a senior in high school. And that thing there put the gear down. I was sure that the bottom of the plane was going to fall out. And that's a plane I really hated when I was in college. It's called a Fokker. You better say that very, very carefully, the name of that plane. And air traffic control did not always say it very, very carefully. Let's just leave it that way. So one of the ways to get over being afraid of airplanes is you got to make them interesting. So I got to ride in the early 70s, I got to ride in the cockpit of this plane with a load of Holstein heifers. See, now we're making a scary thing interesting. One mom had her kid go to all the websites for those really noisy hand dryers, learning how they worked and everything. That tended to make them more interesting. That doesn't cost anything. Fear is my main emotion. Yep, I take antidepressant medication. I don't think there's anything you've got here that's going to work better than my medication. I'm sorry. Maybe St. John's wort. I would not be here if I hadn't gone on antidepressant medication. I would have died from colitis. And you know what happened? 2 weeks later, the colitis cleared up. 2 weeks later. Because it reduced the stress. And I've been on the same low dose for 40 years. Big mistake made, it's too high a dose. The exercise helped, but the problem is I was getting into my early 30s. I was deteriorating. And you're seeing a lot of adult autistics talk about autistic burnout. I don't think it's the social stuff that's burning them out. I think it's the nerves, because I would just have full panic attacks over nothing. And the medication worked. I have a chapter on that in Thinking in Pictures. But take a starter dose. And way too many drugs are given to kids. Oh, it's disgusting amount of drugs are given to kids. Absolutely disgusting. But I don't think I'd be alive today. I'll be 76 this summer if I hadn't discovered better living through chemistry. And I've seen horrible messes when people that have been stable have gone off their meds. Absolute disasters. Jobs lost, houses lost, you name it. Bad stuff. And my squeezing machine helped me to calm down. And I think there's been some people where the anxiety is less bad. Things that you do like meditation, the squeezing machine will work. But as I got older, it was like spitting on a blast furnace. Oh my! And the thing, I couldn't believe it. 2 weeks later, the constant diarrhea and having to eat yogurt and Jell-O because everything went through me. I was counting calories to make sure I ate enough yogurt so I wouldn't croak from lack of calories. And I built that myself, so that's some skilled trades there. And then there's simpler things that you can do for pressure. And there's some individuals that really respond well to pressure. And I was one of those. But what happened with me is when the hormones hit in puberty, that's when it started. And the nerves would go up and down with the menstrual cycle. When the estrogen was high, my nerves were terrible. Now we got to show kids interesting stuff to get them interested in interesting stuff. So how would a kid get interested in sundials? That was just today's real positive email. Somehow that kid got exposed to sundials. We've got to expose kids to lots of interesting things. I got exposed to this optical illusion room, and I got really interested in it. And my teacher challenged me to figure out how to build it myself. And that was shown in the movie. Also, the movie accurately shows my visual thinking. Now, I want to emphasize not everybody with autism is a visual thinker like me. Penrose tiling, thinking in patterns. That's Stephen Hawking. And Stephen Hawking said, concentrate on those things. Your disability doesn't prevent you from doing well. He told that to the New York Times. Science magazines, nature magazines. Look at the patterns. I can't believe the beautiful geometric patterns I'm finding in things like pores in cells. They look like cathedral windows. Beautiful geometric patterns. I'd like to put them in my slideshow, but it's a copyright violation. Then I have them, I can hold them up and wave them around during my Zoom calls. Fractals, these are all free pictures. That's Wikipedia. Math and plants. And I'll just leave this up here, some free educational materials. There's lots of good stuff you can get online. We've got to replace video games with other things because they're not getting great jobs in the video game industry. You know what mom did? One mom did, this is a long time ago. She went to the lumberyard and had 2x4s cut up into blocks, different lengths of blocks. Had the kids sand them and paint them into Minecraft colors. And then they had Minecraft blocks for the driveway. And her kid was a big hit in the neighborhood. That's not a complicated thing to do. Or you can do the same thing with the Amazon boxes. They're free, and you can have giant Minecraft blocks. You see, there's all kinds of stuff you can do like that. It's not expensive. I have another little book. It's called Calling All Minds. It's my childhood projects. I spent hours tinkering with little kites and figuring out how to make them fly better. Little parachutes, tinkering with them. Parachutes made from scarves, getting just the right amount of weight on them, making crossbars so they'd open up quicker. And my mother helped me with that? No, she just let me tinker with those things. Kids are not doing those sort of things today. Parachutes, old scarves, they were all kind of, scarves with runs on them and stuff, and they were free. I'm seeing kids, when I did a book signing for the book 5 years ago outside of Denver, 20 to 30% of kids outside of Denver never made a paper airplane. You've got to be kidding. Well, we had lots of paper there, and they made a lot of paper airplanes, and they had a great time flying them in this theater. All right, let's just open it up for questions right there. I'll just leave that slide up there with all kinds of cool free stuff on it you can get online. And if nobody has a question, they want to pick somebody. Because what I find is you got to get it started. Like yesterday, I couldn't get any of the grocery store employees to talk. And I finally picked somebody, and then they all started talking. There were a lot of autistic kids in that group. Do they flicker?
They're horrible. They flicker, they burn your brain.
Okay, well, the most important, well, they couldn't wear a baseball, but they wear a baseball hat. Well, the most important thing is that they not flicker. That's the most important thing. Because I'm going to guess if you got head injuries, veterans with head injuries, this is really important on the lighting. I'd probably say 10% of autistics, 10 or 20% of dyslexics. You see, it's a subgroup. See, this is the problem, is it's hard to study it because you see, let's say 70% of autistics don't have a problem with the lights. I don't have a problem with it. It might be bright, but that wouldn't be a problem. But you want to make sure they don't flicker. And I was just talking with Brookwood. It's a very good program in Texas for adults, more nonverbal adults, need supervision 24/7. And we tried the stuff with the lighting, and they figured out that, the residents didn't want to stay in the living room and watch the TV, and we found out that flat screen TV was flickering. But the thing about the flat screen TVs, we did some tests at the Hilton just last week. The ones on the bar did not flicker, and the ones in this other lounge did. And it had to do with the internet connection because it was the husband of one of my friends runs shopping malls, and he was telling me some of it I didn't understand. So iPads don't flicker. I don't think any of the tablets actually flicker. But and then some of the flat screen TVs are flickering and some are not. But you can test them with a slow motion video. It's an easy thing to do. I learned that from a lighting contractor at an autism meeting.
We do have the iPads.
Well, iPads don't flicker. So that That's good.
It seems like the rest of the environment, as society keeps progressing and climate change, and we're upgrading to this, or it seems like the quality is going down, even though they're upgrading.
Well, okay, they upgrade the physical. They upgrade the physical school, but some of the stuff you were telling me before I started, I mean, it sounds like things are getting worse, and that COVID, that some of the families were having more problems.
Yeah. So community-wise, there was a lot of stress on families, and after COVID, we're not seeing a bounce back of family values. More to say, we're seeing individual values, individual pursuits, individual. So it's not unified. It's kind of fractured.
So they got kind of used to living apart, and they need to be
and functioning just different. So there's a lot of factors in society now, and that's one of the fears, is that we keep pushing more and let's go faster and let's change our schedule again. Let's add another period to the school day.
Let's just like if I hadn't learned to read, I wouldn't have gotten very far. Mother taught me with phonics, really, really simple, out loud, all out loud reading, and none of this complicated rubbish they've got online. I can't believe some of the complicated ways of teaching phonics. All she did was put the alphabet up on the wall. I memorized my sounds like a, and E has two sounds, and E. And then she'd read a page out of an interesting book like The Wizard of Oz, and then she'd stop and I'd read a few words, and then she'd cue me, well, an E on the end makes the vowel long. She'd remind me. And we did that about 3 afternoons a week for an hour. And by the end of the semester, I went from no reading to 6th grade level reading.
And we just
it wasn't that hard.
We did that this year. We initiated, I'm actually teaching a program in high school for reading, and it's just hands-on, book-based, paper-based, for the kids who were not making progress on the scripted reading online programs. So they'd use that.
We just, first of all, get a book the kid wants to read. And The Wizard of Oz was a book I would want to read. I guess they'd be Harry Potter. And then Mother would read, we started at the beginning, she'd read a whole page, stop in a really interesting part, have me sound out like 1-2 words.
Yep.
Then she'd read another half page. Then gradually I was reading more and more, and she was reading less and less. And you start with a book that the kid may want to read.
We did that this year, and we used the Odyssey,
a
different version of the Odyssey. And that was really successful and helpful.
Well, and something interesting. Okay, because back when I was in 3rd grade, we were reading Dick and Jane. To see Dick run. I mean, those are totally boring books. I hated them. Absolutely hated them. And then other autistic kids might be whole word learner. So don't mess up a whole word learner with phonics. You'll really mess them up. So the whole word learner, you just got to teach them more nouns. And then the reading out loud, I think, was really important.
Yep.
That was very important for me. And then I had to learn silently, and then I'd be whispering. Then I had to learn to read totally silently. But my reading lessons were all out loud reading. It was like an hour a day when I got home from school. It wasn't that hard. It wasn't that complicated.
So I have a question. If you're having a sensory experience and you're not at home, you're somewhere far from home, how do you distract yourself from that negative sensory experience that you're having in order to continue to function without offending your hostess?
When a sensory experience does what?
Well, mine is smell. My olfactories are very, very sensitive, and I can smell things.
Certain smells you don't want to.
Yeah. And the people are very offended when I tell them that, that the cigarette smoke is bothering me or the cat box is bothering me.
Anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how to if I could find a way to distract myself from it so that I'm not thinking about it, it'd be very helpful.
Maybe put some Vicks on your nose.
Maybe.
So you mask it. Mask it.
How do you distract yourself when you have something that's negative for you? How do you get away from that?
Well, like some loud beeping or something going on. Well, first of all, I can't carry on a conversation if that's going on. And I have to say, I got kind of rattled about, I come up there on a scary road I wasn't expecting. Okay, let's just look at how to do something with someone with autism. That was a bad choice of a road. You should have told me to come in Highway 34. Because let's say when I was in my 20s, I would have panicked. You see, that was a surprise. You see, because one time I went up Independence Pass, never again. Never again. You see, when you look at it on the map, it looks like a shortcut. And that's the scariest. Oh, there's no way. I will not be a passenger either on Independence Pass. And then when I came back from the meeting, I took 2 hours extra to get around the other way.
So how do you calm yourself down? How do you get
Well, I
through
finally just had to say, I've got to calm down, and I'm going to just sit in the car at the gas station. I was at the gas station for half an hour, and I waited for the boss to come back, and he knew where this place was. But Google Maps is not correct. That's the problem. And there's like in my condo complex, when we got a new mail person, we had a terrible time with our mail for my cluster getting delivered over to the other cluster. And I finally made a sign, lots of tape over on the other cluster saying, please bring your mail over, the right place, because the GPS is totally wrong in our condo development. So that was something that you see, the phones didn't work. Yeah.
Hello, I'm actually an art teacher, but I'm working here at Eden Valley now. But what I really appreciate and liked, I've been saying it for years, is how we need to get the kids more involved in the shop classes and all that.
I think we need to be doing a lot more hands-on things, because a lot of these kids that are different, it's going to be art, the play, playing in a band, musical instruments. No, I didn't care about being in the play, but I loved to make costumes. And when I was in 4th grade, I had a Singer Sew Handy. It was a toy sewing machine that actually sewed. I made costumes for the school play with it.
Yeah, because the more and more they're getting back to it, but they were doing, when I was teaching, they were getting into the computer thing, everyone in that. And that's, I guess, important for a lot of things. But there's people that just want, I like to weld. I need about 4 or 5 lifetimes because there's too many things I want to do.
The problem is now, like when I go around, nobody knows how to weld.
I want to learn.
I mean, this has really gotten to be a problem. Like I go out visiting some small ranches now, some new ones, they just get portable panels, cobble it up. Okay, since everybody's busted up the rotator cuff, me included, so they go out and they buy a cheap hydraulic squeeze knockoff of a brand because their shoulders are too messed up. But shoulders aren't too messed up to do welding. The problem is that nobody knows how to weld. Yes, I messed this up. I heard it on getting my elbow stuck in a airport shuttle door of all stupid things. It was just kind of a freaky thing. Now, it wouldn't affect welding. You don't have to, the stinger's not very heavy.
Then again, I asked some of the counselors, guidance counselors, why they don't encourage the tech schools, at least at the time. And they didn't really have an answer for me. They encouraged the 4-year liberal arts colleges. There's not a problem with that, but many students.
But you see, some of these students, they need to be going the tech route. And I was on a Zoom call 2 weeks ago with the animal science students in a high school. And I showed these same slides. I talked about the skilled tradespeople I worked with. Boy, a girl comes up at the end, and they had to come up to the computer to talk to me because she's looming there on the computer saying, my guidance counselor said I shouldn't take a vo-tech class. It's exactly what she said. And then the same week, I did a talk to a gifted group, and the parents are saying, well, they don't want their kids in any vo-tech classes. Maybe they're afraid they're going to like them. But the thing is inventing mechanical equipment is a different kind of intelligence, and they just don't get it. Yeah. And they do things like play around with the plasma table, making signs. But what they really need to learn how to do is just take your basic steel shapes, pipes and square tubing and angle irons and pieces of metal, and just make stuff from scratch out of it.
Yeah. I work on the farm, and I'm always like, man, there's got to be a better tool or some way to do this. And everybody's thinking, I'm thinking, we got to make a tool, and I want to figure out how to weld it or do something different to make it more efficient or whatever.
But the thing is, kids aren't doing this. So the kid, you see, in my mind thinks in specific examples. Okay, like the pilot's checklist thing, where that would have saved a job. That's come up over and over and over and over again. And the one thing that's worked on getting young adults off of video games has been auto mechanics. 5 or 6 different young adults I've talked to. And I said, well, what's about the auto mechanics? And they said motors are more interesting than video games. And these were adults, and they weaned them off, and they went into decent jobs like fixing trains, working in a quick lube place. They need to work in a quick lube, not at the dealer. That's too boring. You want lots of different kinds of cars coming in. But these are things that I've been doing these talks for a long time, and certain things keep coming up. The pilot's checklist thing, that's going to save a ton of jobs.
Thank you.
Okay. And if you actually look up pilot's checklists, they're very simple, like pre-flight, walk around the plane, and then it's just like 1 to 3 keywords, with like 12 different things you have to check. Pre-taxi, pre-takeoff. They're like they're clustered.
Hi, Temple.
Okay.
My name is Kelly, and I am the proud mother of Malachi Joshua Calderon. Malachi is 14. He has been diagnosed with autism, but I am here to share that he is thriving.
Good.
He was not talking for the longest time. Now he's talking nonstop. So if anybody needs to
And how's he
listen to
doing
somebody,
in school and things like that?
yeah, school, we've been very blessed. School has been very workable with us. He is thriving. You were saying about how to hone in on that they're interested about. I know he came tonight because he wants to see you because he thought it was cool to meet somebody else with autism.
Well, and the thing is that I think in Colorado you can do safe retail jobs at 14.
Yes.
And some of the jobs that have been good, ice cream shop's been good because you serve one client at a time. The office supply store, these are really good training jobs. Now, one of the big problems I see with voc rehab counselors is they don't differentiate between ice cream shop as a training, and then there's others where it is a suitable career. Wouldn't be a suitable career for me. But the biggest problem I see, kids aren't learning how to work.
That's true.
And the other big problem is like you got to get your butt to work on time. You got to actually get there.
Mm-hmm.
Get there on time.
Exactly. Well, and what we have found is autism is definitely stretching us too. And as you understand, you have to think outside the box. Like for the longest time, we could never get Kai to take a shower. We got goggles because his therapist recommended it. And he's been getting showers ever since with goggles.
And what did you use?
Goggles, like
Okay,
swimming
so
goggles.
then just get in his eyes. Okay.
Exactly.
Well, then what I do, because I don't like it in my eyes, is I hang the towel over the shower rod, and then I blot them. I get water, and then I can immediately just grab that towel and I
Yeah.
can blot them. That's what I do.
Exactly.
But that's something simple. Or the goggles, that's simple.
Yes.
See, these are the kind of simple accommodations that we need to figure out. Because the one thing you can't be is a rude, filthy, dirty slob.
Right.
That's something you can't be. You can be
Especially when
somewhat
you're 14.
eccentric, but not a dirty slob. And there's a scene in the movie where my boss slammed down a deodorant and said, "You stink, use it." That actually happened.
Sure. And then I also just want to share, I'm actually a graphic and web designer myself. So like we do a lot of visual schedules and stuff
Yeah,
for
that's
Kai.
good.
And that has been very, very helpful. And, also we deal with at times when Kai just gets so frustrated, but I think it may be more panic attacks as I was hearing you talk, hitting of the head and stuff. He just struggles with that. But
Is he getting enough exercise? I mean, that's really important
that's
because
something I want to
I
increase
find
for
if
him.
I don't do those push-ups every night, then I have trouble sleeping.
Yes.
Yeah, what I found is a burst of hard exercise, and I had to do something I can do in a hotel room.
Yes.
And those are exercises. I put a towel down on the floor, and I can do those. And I used to do jogging, and then that started hurting my knees, and I was getting complaints from the guests down below. And then I was doing sit-ups, but then my sciatic got messed up. So now I'm doing I just bring the front
Yes.
half up,
Yes.
but I do a burst of that.
Sure.
And I find if I don't do those old lady push-ups every night, I do 120 of them.
Yes.
And then I also do an exercise where I lay on the floor and I swim.
Right.
And that I got to do them every day.
The other thing that
I'm not going to get it. I'm not
Sorry.
going to get a handicap pass, and I'm going to walk in from that garage. Do I like walking in from the garage? No. But I think it's something I need to make myself do.
Sure.
Now I do
sure.
try to find empty parking spot behind our building, but it's just it's a regular hunting permit. It's nothing specialized.
That's awesome. The other thing I just wanted to share real briefly is we play the balancing act of how much therapy is too much therapy.
Oh, you can do too much therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
I would agree with that.
Exactly.
When the kids are really little,
Yeah.
when they're really like 3-year-olds, they need a lot of hours.
Right.
But then you can get to the point where like the 14-year-old is just ridiculous.
yes.
No, we need a lot more real life stuff that you need to be doing.
Exactly. And I just want to say from our family, thank you for being an advocate and getting the voices out there to help advocate
Well, I'm
for
really
other
pleased
people.
to help you with your son because I just want to figure out practical things people can do that don't cost $1 million. My only thing I sell is books. I've made a point of not being involved with any service providers. I'm not getting commission. I get royalties from books. And what I've done with my book money is I've put over 20 graduate students through CSU. That's what I've done with the speaking engagement money, and that's what I've done with my book money. And I live in a condo I bought for $38,000 back in 1990. And now I got a card in the mail that if I don't like what they appraised it at, I can protest it.
Hi, my name is Tricia Cummings, and I'm a psych mental health nurse practitioner from Colorado Springs.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Okay. And I have probably a good 20, 25 autistic patients. And the biggest complaint that the parents are sharing with me is the kids do not want to go to sleep. And so
Are the kids getting exercise? Because that is something. Okay, before we do any medication, I want to get them on a really good exercise program. Now, I didn't work up when I was doing the sit-ups. I was doing 100 sit-ups every night on the bed and tore up the mattress. But I didn't do 100 sit-ups on the first day. It took me 3 months to work up to 100 sit-ups without stopping. Okay. But I found that doing that kind of exercise, a burst of hard exercise, that made a big difference.
Okay.
We got to make sure he's getting enough exercise. I want to do that avenue before you do any medication.
Okay.
So what's he doing for exercise?
They're going to school and doing school gym and things like
Well,
that.
but there's some research that shows that this. I found walking in the airport, walking out to the parking lot, that's good for other things, but that doesn't help with the sleeping. The burst of hard exercise makes me sweat and breathe hard.
Okay.
That's the thing that seems to help with the sleep. And you have to work up to that slowly. I don't want anybody having a heart attack because you jumped into this way too quickly. You don't want to do that.
And then my next thing is, would you recommend any natural type of sleep aids over, the medications?
Well, there's natural things that you can try. Let's just try the exercise first. My anxiety was to the point where I don't think any of the natural things would have worked. I mean, my amygdala's 3 times bigger than normal. That's the fear center in the brain. It's 3 times bigger than normal. Okay. Now, that kind of brain scan you can't even get commercially. But when they St. John's wort, that's sort of like natural Prozac. Yep. That might be helpful. But the exercise, let's try one thing at a time. I'm a big fan of trying one thing at a time. Let's try the exercise and see and work up to it slowly.
Okay.
The burst of hard exercise is going to take 3 months to work up to it where it's really going to work. That's what it took me. I don't want somebody dropping dead from a heart attack. So don't try to do it too quickly. And then you might try something else. I'm not some people have been taking CBD. I am very concerned about the high strength pot. The THC levels are 5, 6, 7 times stronger than the stuff in my generation. And then I looked that up on the PubMed database, and I'm finding stuff about paranoia and stuff like that. I'm real concerned about that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You see, and the problem is they up the THC, the CBD goes down. Yeah, and the thing is, if you take CBD, you got to make sure it doesn't have too much THC. And the only other problem I got, you go up to Wyoming and cross the Nebraska line, it's a felony. So I don't touch any of that stuff because I'm flying too much and I can't risk having that in the bag. So I'm sticking with stuff that's completely legal. But the exercise, the medication alone does not do it. I have to have the exercise.
There's not a question, but I do want to make a comment in regards to the exercise. One of the things we do here at Eden Valley is called the 8 Laws of Health. And nutrition is the N. It has New Start. So it's not just taking St. John's wort that we do here. It's nutrition,
you need to be
exercise.
having decent nutrition too.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I can't.
Absolutely.
The other thing is controlling obesity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is another. The amount of carbs that people are eating. I don't drink. My drinks are plain coffee, water, and once in a great while a single glass of wine. No calories from drinks. I've cut. I mean, I like my sweets. I'll have a square of chocolate. And I was tired yesterday. I bought some lemon cake at the convenience store, and I ate that last night. But a simple way to cut down on sugar is there's no calories from drinks. And I don't drink any of I was getting fat on Diet Cokes. I looked up aspartame and weight gain. I do not like what I read on that. I don't touch that stuff. Water, coffee, and then sometimes those flavored soda waters. Those are just treats on planes. I don't buy them. Home, it's water and plain coffee. And that takes a gob of sugar out. And I found when I did that, I could get some of my old 20-year-old shirts back on. That's a simple thing to do. Well, and I eat my veggies. I made sure I ate some salad tonight, the dark green stuff. I'm traveling all the time, so I can't, I was at another meeting they had up at CSU, and there was a whole plate full of raw carrots. I took a bunch of those. I try to, eat healthy. Typical breakfast for me is plain yogurt with no sugar, cut up an apple, blueberries, put some granola over it, and a little trail mix over it. That's a real common breakfast for me. Then I like to sit and read Science and Nature while I'm eating that. That's my good breakfast reading. So that's stuff that I try to do.
Temple, I have another question for you.
Okay.
A lot of the children on the autism spectrum, at least this latest generation, seem to be pretty violent and aggressive.
Well, I had some problems with being aggressive, and when kids bullied me. I got kicked out in ninth grade for throwing. I threw a book. That was my weapon of choice. Was a book.
This is what I'm seeing as an advocate and as a parent on the spectrum. With a child on the spectrum, I hear a lot of parents tell me it's towards their caregivers, not necessarily school, because school's a safe school. They know that's not a safe person to harm. But you're getting a lot of these kids growing up. They're aggressive to their parent, and maybe they're 4 or 5.
Consequences for that, because when I did some aggressive stuff. When I was a little kid in elementary school, the rule was a temper tantrum, and one of them, I bit my teacher's leg badly, and it was 3rd grade, and anything like that, the rule was no television for one night. If I threw a fit in school or at home, no television for one night. Now, when I was throwing a big fit, they put me in my room and let me calm down for 20 minutes. Then mother would say, well, you can come back and join the family. You know the rule. There'll be no television tonight. And it was very evenly applied both at school and at home. The consequences for aggressive behavior. Consequences. And so when I was in elementary school, I might have one of these things happen once a semester. And then when I was in high school, I was always in response to being bullied and called names. And a girl called me a retard, and I chucked a heavy book across the room and beamed her on the head. And then there were some other things where I did some fists, but when I did fists, when I went to a new boarding school, there was no horseback riding for 2 weeks. Yeah, there was a consequence. We're doing that kind of stuff. And then the other thing that ended up happening, I had to switch from anger to crying. That was after the horseback riding got taken away. It's okay for boys to cry. You should have seen the NASA space scientists cry when they canceled the space shuttle. Go look it up on 60 Minutes. Walking off camera, crying. The bar is shut down where they used to go. They're all crying. I went to a meeting where space scientists talked about it in person. Everybody was crying. Yes, NASA space scientists just cry when their projects are canceled, because if they got aggressive, NASA will fire them. NASA does not tolerate that. You throw one tool, you're fired. They fired a guy for throwing a briefcase down a hall, even though it did not hit anybody. He was fired for that. They have a zero tolerance, any aggressive act. So boys cry at when their stuff doesn't work or it gets taken away. No, I switched from anger to crying. Yeah, it still was just as miserable, but you didn't get in trouble for that. See, that's the important thing.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Anyone else have any
Oh,
questions?
here's somebody's got a question right here.
Hi, Temple. My name's Chris. I'm a mental health counselor, and I help create job opportunities for a lot of individuals who have been missed in early identification of a diagnosis, and in some cases, autism spectrum. And I'm finding that in a lot of job starts, individuals are not performing at the pace that employers are in need of.
Yep, and that's
it's
something
creating a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety.
What is the job? Give me an example. I don't want to talk in generalities.
An oil change, Jiffy Lube, changing oil in cars,
okay,
for example, where the skills are a good match, but the performance needs are not being met.
Do you have pilots checklists for them? Let's have checklists. I think that's going to help.
The employer does, but they also have a requirement of pace. And I'm wondering how
they can work up to that. See, this I've heard this before. They take longer to train, but then once they're trained, they're the best employee. They're going to show up for work, and they will do the oil changes quickly enough. Now, on something like the oil change, what part of the job are they slow on?
Handling the tools with proficiency.
Maybe we need to just get some nuts and bolts and things like that, and just have them practice with the wrenches and things, and just learn some tool skills and practice it. That might help for that job. See, now there's other jobs where I was at a big training conference, so I brought up the job of gate agent at the airport. Okay, now when I watch the gate agent do this, like to get a ticket, I can't remember that. You see, for me to do that job, I'd have to write down the keystrokes for things like check a bag, find a seat, print a boarding pass, and then I'd have to take them home, and I would have to practice them at home. But then on the other hand, frozen jet bridges, I think I can make those go away. It might be the angle that you park them at. It might be something that simple. But I would do those keystroke practicing at home. Now, if they're with tool proficiency, maybe they need to just get a board with some bolts on it and stuff like that, and just practice using the tools. Okay, I'm trying to figure out a simple way because for the gate agent job, for those keystrokes, I would have to practice that at home. Probably make up jingles for different things, because I would be too slow at the airport.
One other question would be, how did you get better at advocating for your personal needs?
I don't know. Like when I was in college and I failed my first math quiz, I just went to the professor. I just did it. It was called Get Tutored Before You Fail the Course. I think some of it gets back to selling that candy for charity and those parties that we had to go up and greet the guests. I wasn't afraid to go and ask the teacher. No, it wasn't called advocating. That I just did it. But what I'm seeing now is kids are flunking out of school because they wait until they've trashed the class. No, I went right to the professor after I failed the first quiz. And I got help. And I think some of that 50s upbringing with the party training and selling candy for charity, where you had to go up and ask people to buy candy, I think those skills were really important. It never crossed my mind not to go to the teacher. I just did it. I just said, well, if I don't do something, I'm going to fail the class. And right now, we got all kinds of students flunking out of school because they don't ask for help soon enough. It wasn't called advocating for yourself. It was called get tutoring before you before you drop out of school from failing these classes. See, this is, I think, another reason why the grandparents have the jobs. They had paper routes. They had to go out and sell customers to put on the paper route. They have to go to the customers and collect the money. You see, and you realize the skills they were learning from that. You have to get them on time, not throw them in the bushes. I get a Wall Street Journal delivered, and sometimes they throw it under the neighbor's car. And one day the neighbor's car ran over it, and it was under the tire of the neighbor's car. So I had to wait until they moved it.
One last question, if I may.
Yep.
Instead of finding an ideal job placement for someone, would you say there's value in just getting someone to work and
Yes.
just getting them
Yes, there
experience?
is value. Yes. I just want to avoid the chaotic takeout window jobs because that loads the working memory too much. So yes, like bagging groceries, I think for a lot of people, that's a really good training job for summer. And that's not a lot of multitasking. Ice cream shops, office supply store. I think there's a lot of individuals that where just having a job and learning how to work. But for a lot of these kids, I don't think bagging groceries is the kind of career they want to be doing. But it would be a really good summer training job just to learn some job skills. But I want to avoid the jobs that are going to make them fail. Another big failure was a girl who was in Denver. They stuck her in a Gap store at Christmas time. And it was chaos. And that failed. I've got to avoid that really rapid multitasking chaos. Like Barnes & Noble, the bookstore usually would be the perfect job, but not the Christmas wrapping station. That I was in there just before COVID shut it down, and it was chaos at that wrapping station. Like 3 people wrapping books. How do you make sure you don't mix them up? Give the customer the wrong book. And I looked at that wrapping station. I go, no, I don't put them there. That's setting up for failure. Too much chaos, too much rapid multitasking. So I want to avoid those jobs. Those will be 3 specific. I don't think in generalities. I only think in specific examples. And I go, what does a McDonald's takeout window, a Gap store at Christmas time, and a chaos Barnes & Noble wrapping station have in common? High-speed, rapid multitasking, and not mixing up the books, not mixing up the orders. Those are the kind of jobs I want to avoid. That's setting up a failure. No, I think they do need to learn how to work. But the other mistake that's made is there's some clients where bagging groceries is a suitable career, and there's others like me where it would be a training job. The other problem is when there's a problem at work, the VOTEC counselors don't dig down and find what the problem was. Here's a real stupid thing that could have been easily fixed. An autistic man was working at some shop, some small shop, and one Christmas carol they played caused a sensory problem with him. And well, you see, you have to ask enough questions to find out what is the issue. Maybe you could put the headphones on during the Christmas carol, or you take it off the playlist. So, but Voc Rehab says, well, we'll just give you another autistic person. Well, the shop doesn't want to do that because they've already trained them. So if they had just found out that this one Christmas carol was a problem, well, then do something about the Christmas carol. Put on the headset, take it off the playlist, turn the thing off when that plays. You lost a job over that. That's right. That's recent. That's right now that happened. The electrician's apprentice thing is real recent. The Gap thing, that was just before COVID. This isn't stuff I'm digging up from 30 years ago. This is recent stuff.
Thank you so much. I think one of the things that you emphasize there is that we no longer have a society that has good, strong family values.
Well, this is part of the
work
problem
ethics,
because
and so
we'd
forth.
sit down at the dining room table and learn how to take turns telling about our day. The other thing that really helped me with my impulsive behavior, a lot of emphasis when I was like 5 and 6 years old on turn taking at board games, learning how to wait and take turns. That was a very, very important part of my training. And in my early childhood stuff, there was eye contact. I wouldn't worry about that. My speech teacher concentrated on speech, turn taking at games, and skills. like eating with utensils, things like that.
Yeah, basic manners.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and stop the Q&A right now, and we're going to close out. And if you have any further questions, or you'd like to have a book signed, or you would just like to take a picture with Dr. Grandin, you could be meeting over here at this little desk over here. And then I will, yes, ma'am. We have 2 books that we brought here. We didn't bring a bunch. We didn't purchase a lot for you to get signed, but we do have 1 or 2 here. We are going to do a drawing for the free books that we took the names for. So in other words, basically we don't have any for you to purchase here. There is one that we're going to be doing a drawing for. So if you didn't bring something to sign, you can go out to the foyer area there, and we do have the flyers for today's event. That also has the you can have a sign the back of it or something like that. Okay, but as you can see, there's a great need and challenge and have a great need for multiple different types of minds and thinking. One of the taglines for the nonprofit that I run is "See the able, not the label." And a lot of times we get put in boxes, and we as parents or as neighbors, as aunts, uncles, family members, professionals, and so forth, we hear someone has this disability, and we put them in a box. And one thing that I admire about Dr. Grandin is that she didn't put it in a box, she built the box, and she keep modifying the box as she needed it to be done. And that's what I want to encourage you, everyone that is here, to think as well. Yeah, and you've heard me say it before, if you meet one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. In other words, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I hope you gleaned in some wonderful nuggets and that you enjoyed your time here. We're going to close it out with a quick prayer, and then we'll just move over here and allow you to chat with Dr. Grandin personally. So please bow your head. Gracious Heavenly Father, I want to thank you so much. Your word tells us that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, that each brain, each body, each person is so wonderfully designed to benefit and to bless this world. And so, Lord, I just pray that you would help us to do just what you have called us to do, is to not label anybody, but see the abilities and celebrate the diversity that you have developed, not only in the human, but also, Lord, in the diversity of nature and animals and so forth. I pray that you would put a special blessing, Lord, on Dr. Grandin as she travels and she's moving about, advocating on the behalf of individuals with autism and the families, but also, Lord, for the animals. I just pray that you would keep her safe, keep her healthy and strong, so that she can continue to do the work that you have given her to do. I pray that you'll be with each person here as they travel back as well. Thank you so much for all that you've given us, the seen and the unseen. In the name we pray, Jesus. Amen.